The report Maris filed to remove him carried her own signature. Clerk's hands went still. 2 guards moving. 43 million on the line. The man she was removing hadn't moved. Plain folder, cheap pen, scuffed badge. The guard turned the nameplate. Dr. Langston Pike. The signature wasn't the worst thing in that room. Langston hadn't wandered in. A judge placed him there. 9 months of procurement fraud pointed at Maris's company, and he needed removing before evidence hit the record. The humiliation wasn't cruelty. It was a move to kill the investigation. Worse, Langston held voting rights, blocking her acquisition of her main competitor through his late wife's wrongful death settlement. Her team founded 11 months ago. 3 weeks later, they moved against him. Drop a comment about what you learned from the story and remember to subscribe. Because Langston is about to find out how far someone will go to erase a man they assumed had nothing. Maris Weatherby slid the incident report across the table and told the clerk to call building security. She didn't raise her voice. She said the man at the end of the table had attempted to interfere with a live bid session. She said, that man, without looking at him. Every head in the glass-walled conference room on the 7th floor of the Fulton County Procurement Annex turned toward the end of the table, where a black man in a maintenance jacket had set down a plain folder and a cheap pen. The clerk picked up the report, read it, and went still. Ma'am, she said, this incident report is signed with your digital certificate. Nobody moved. In a controlled procurement session, credentials were locked by role and clearance level. Maris's certificate had no business being inside a document she claimed she'd never touched. The clerk read it again. Same result. The security guard reached Langston's end of the table and asked him to step outside. Langston picked up the nameplate in front of his seat, turned it toward the guard, and held it flat. Dr. Langston Pike. County-issued font. Same as every other nameplate at the table. A second guard stepped into the doorway. Maris didn't wait. Someone gave him a nameplate, she said. That doesn't make him authorized. I want him out. County Chair Gail Mercer looked at Maris. Then at Langston. Dr. Pike, she said, are we on the record? We are, Langston said. He slid his county badge forward, scuffed, barcode, years of use worn into it, and beside it, a notarized letter carrying a Fulton County seal. The nearest guard picked it up, read 2 lines, and put it down without finishing his sentence. Maris's counsel leaned in. Maris didn't wait for his read. I don't care what letter he produced, she said. My attorneys will be in Superior Court by noon. Madam Chair, you know what a controlled room requires. Gail's voice didn't rise. Ms. Weatherby, she said, this room follows county law. She turned back to Langston. You may speak. Langston pulled 1 page from his folder. He didn't stand. At 11:46 p.m. last night, someone uploaded a protest packet to the county procurement portal from an internal workstation on this floor, he said. That packet was filed under my name. It contained Ms. Weatherby's digital certificate. He set the page flat on the table. My badge was scanned on this floor at 11:38 p.m. I was in West End at 6:14 p.m. picking my daughter up from after-school care. I have the sign-out log. He looked at the clerk. Someone used my access. And the certificate in that packet belongs to the woman who just tried to have me removed. Maris laughed once. Short. I don't know who you are, she said. County Attorney Reuben Landry wrote something on his notepad without looking up. Gail called a recess. As the room shifted, Maris looked at Langston for the first time. Really looked. Her eyes moved over the jacket, the worn badge, the cheap pen. Let me guess, she said, low enough to miss the microphones. Facilities. Night shift. Someone handed you a file and told you that you mattered. She leaned slightly forward. Go back downstairs and fix what they tell you to fix. Langston's face didn't move. I've fixed things people like you break, he said. I didn't need your permission then either. Maris pulled back. People like me, she repeated. Langston said nothing. In the hallway, Reuben fell into step beside him. I read the notarized letter, Reuben said, voice low. Compliance Monitor Authority under County Procurement Code. He paused. Who appointed you? Langston looked toward the elevator bank. The security desk. The camera above the exit sign. A judge, he said. A compliance monitor doesn't get appointed by a judge unless something has already gone wrong. Quietly, expensively, and in a way someone is still working to keep buried. And whoever cloned Langston's badge the night before had done it in a window narrow enough that only a handful of people could have been on that floor. Subscribe before you find out who was still in that building. Because they didn't just use his badge. They needed him gone. Reuben folded his notepad and walked back toward the conference room without another word. Langston's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. His daughter's after-school coordinator had messaged twice. He was supposed to be there by 5. It was 4:43. He put the phone back without reading the second message. Inside, Maris was already at the far end of the table with Asa Varnell. "This is a delay tactic," she said. "A procurement worth $43 million is sitting on hold." Asa spoke low. Maris cut him off. "Get Mercer back in here." Gail was already seated. She called the room to order. The court reporter straightened. People found their chairs. Maris sat down. Gail looked across the table. "Dr. Pike," she said, clear enough for every microphone. "Please return to your seat." Maris's chin lifted. Langston walked back in, set his folder down, and sat. Maris didn't wait. "Madam Chair, I want it on record that this session has been disrupted by an individual whose authorization has not been independently verified." Asa placed a document in front of Gail. "We're requesting the session resume without the compliance monitor until his appointment is reviewed by independent counsel." Gail looked at the document. "Set it aside." "Denied. You're putting a $43 million contract at risk because of one." "The contract is not at risk," Gail said. "The process is under review." She turned to Reuben. "Where are we on the access logs?" "IT is pulling them now," Reuben said. "Joyce Kwan will have the report within the hour." Maris turned toward the window. When she turned back, she was composed. "Run your logs," she said. "You'll find nothing that connects my company to whatever he's claiming. And when you don't, I expect this procurement to resume without further interference." She gestured toward Langston without using his name. Langston's phone buzzed again. He checked it under the table. "His daughter's coordinator. He's asking for you. Should I call someone else?" He typed back, "I'm coming. 1 hour." He set the phone face down on his knee. He had documented anomalies going back 43 days. He had a badge scan that put someone else in this building under his name. And he had a daughter sitting in a West End classroom waiting on him to show up. The folder in front of him held enough to pause the procurement. What it didn't hold was time. Near the door, one of the junior county staff, a young woman who had been quietly refilling water glasses since the session opened, slipped a folded note onto the edge of Langston's folder and kept moving without stopping. He opened it under the table. It said, "We see you. Keep going." No name. He folded it back and put it in his pocket. Maris leaned toward Asa and said something that didn't reach the microphones. Asa pulled out his own phone and stepped toward the door. Maris watched Gail, then watched Langston, and made a calculation that hadn't fully resolved yet. Reuben came back to the table and sat. "Kwan's team is already in the system," he said quietly. "Whatever's in those logs comes out in the next hour whether anyone wants it to or not." Maris heard that. Her hand stilled on the table. Langston looked straight ahead. He didn't need the next hour to go perfectly. He just needed it to go forward. 1 floor below, Joyce Kwan pulled up the 7th floor access log and found the 11:38 p.m. badge scan, and the face on the camera feed attached to it wasn't Langston Pike. Subscribe before the next truth surfaces. Someone in that building left a trail they can't erase. Joyce Kwan pulled the 7th floor access log onto her screen and flagged the 11:38 p.m. entry before Reuben finished walking through the door. The badge number was Langston's. The face on the camera feed was not. The man on the footage wore a vendor lanyard and kept his chin angled down. He swiped the badge, held the door, and moved through it in 11 seconds. Joyce rewound it twice, then pulled the internal workstation log for the same floor. At 11:46 p.m., a file was uploaded to the county procurement portal from Terminal 7C. She cross-referenced the upload metadata. The embedded certificate inside the protest packet matched Maris Weatherby's company signature. Reuben looked at the screen. "That terminal," he said. "Who has access?" "Procurement staff. Senior level only," Joyce said. "And any vendor issued a temporary internal pass for that floor." Reuben straightened. "Pull the pass list for that night." Gail called a closed session. No vendors, no outside counsel, no Maris. The room was Gail, Reuben, Joyce, and Langston. Joyce projected the footage on the wall. Nobody spoke while it played. When it finished, Gail looked at Langston. "Walk us through what you flagged before today," she said. Langston opened his folder. 6 weeks ago, I flagged a bid scoring worksheet edited after its submission timestamp," he said. The edit moved one vendor above another in the compliance ranking. He turned a page. 3 weeks ago, subcontractor invoices that didn't match delivery records. Materials billed on dates the site logs showed no delivery. He turned another page. 2 weeks ago, vendor passes issued to representatives not on the approved walkthrough list. Gail looked at Ruben. Ruben looked at Joyce. One of those flagged passes was issued through our vendor coordination system, Joyce said. The request came from inside, from a procurement aid account. She pulled up another screen. That account was also logged into Terminal 7C at 11:44 p.m., 2 minutes before the upload, Ruben said. Joyce nodded. Whoever did this knew the system. They knew how to pull an internal pass, access a senior terminal, embed a certificate into a pre-formatted packet, and file it under an existing monitor's credentials. This wasn't improvised. Gail folded her hands on the table. Why you? She said to Langston. Out of everyone in this process, why use your name? Langston looked at the projected footage on the wall. Because I'm the person people don't look twice at when I walk through a back in trance, he said. My badge has been scanned at loading docks and service corridors for 2 years. Low status on site. High access on paper. If something goes wrong and my name is on it, the first assumption isn't fraud. It's that I overstepped. He set his folder flat. They chose the version of me that people see before they read the nameplate. Ruben pulled out his phone and typed without reading it back. I'm requesting the full vendor pass registry for the last 60 days, he said. And I want that aid account suspended until we finish pulling the chain. Gail nodded. Do it. She looked at Joyce. Did anyone warn that account before we started pulling logs today? Joyce checked her screen. 3 outgoing messages this morning, she said. All sent before 8 a.m. Before this session started. Gail stood and gathered her folder. As she passed Langston's chair, she paused without turning fully toward him. For what it's worth, she said, quiet enough that only he heard it. You're the first compliance monitor in 4 years who brought a notarized letter and a sign-out log to a meeting nobody told you to prepare for. She kept walking. Langston looked at the table. The protest packet was built before the session opened. Upstairs, Maris was still waiting for Gail to call the session back. She didn't know yet that the aid account connected to her company's consultant had already sent 3 messages it couldn't take back. Subscribe before the name behind those messages surfaces, because it connects somewhere no one in that room saw coming. Gail called the full session back to order at 5:17 p.m. The vendors were quieter. The county staff moved with more purpose. Maris walked in 2 steps behind Asa, took her seat, and placed both hands flat on the table. Gail opened the record. This committee has received credible evidence of attempted interference in this procurement process. A formal integrity review has been initiated. The session will continue under those conditions. Murmurs crossed the room. Maris's jaw tightened. Gail turned to Langston. Dr. Pike, you may present your findings. Langston didn't stand. He opened his folder and laid out the chain in order. The scoring worksheet edited after its submission timestamp. The invoices that didn't match delivery records. The vendor pass issued through an internal account to someone not on the approved list. The badge scan at 11:38 p.m. that put a different man on the 7th floor under his name. The upload at 11:46 p.m. from Terminal 7C carrying Maris's embedded certificate. He didn't raise his voice once. He didn't look at Maris. He read each item the way you read a sequence that only moves in one direction. When he finished, he closed the folder. Maris didn't wait for Gail. This is fabricated, she said. Every item he listed is circumstantial. An edited worksheet proves nothing. A vendor pass irregularity proves nothing. A certificate embedded in a packet filed under his name, she gestured at Langston, could mean he planted it himself. She looked at Gail. You're pausing a $43 million public contract based on a maintenance workers folder. Ruben leaned into his microphone. Dr. Pike is the court-appointed compliance monitor for this procurement, he said, appointed by Fulton County Superior Court. And he holds a doctorate in systems engineering from a university program your company donated to 3 years ago, Ms. Weatherby. The room went still. Langston looked at Maris. I don't care what you think I am, he said. You should care what I can prove. Maris's eyes moved to him. Prove what? She said. Langston slid the final document from his folder, an emergency integrity review request signed by a Superior Court judge, filed that morning before the session opened. He placed it in front of Gail. Gail read it. looked up. "This procurement is paused," she said. "Effective immediately." Maris stood. "You cannot do that." Her voice broke its controlled register for the first time. "You are putting public services at risk because of him." She pointed at Langston. "A county employee with a folder and a fantasy. Who does he answer to? You're letting one person derail a process that affects this entire county." Nobody in the room moved toward her. Gail looked at her steadily. "The process was already derailed, Ms. Weatherby," she said. "We're correcting it." Maris turned to Asa. Asa was already on his phone. She scanned the room. Vendors, county staff, the court reporters moving fingers, and found no one returning her gaze with anything useful. "I want a closed session with legal counsel," she said. Immediately. Gail denied it. Maris pulled out her own phone under the table and called a board member she'd cultivated for 2 years. Voicemail. She called a second contact. Voicemail. She set the phone face down and looked straight ahead. Langston picked up his folder, aligned the edges, and set it back down. The room hadn't cheered. It had simply moved in a direction Maris couldn't redirect. Outside the session, she cornered him in the hallway. "What do you want?" she said low. Langston checked his phone. One message from the trust department he hadn't opened. One from his daughter's coordinator. "I want the process clean," he said. "And I want whoever used my badge out of this building." Maris studied him. "You don't own anything here," she said. Langston looked at her. "You sure about that?" Maris opened her mouth. Closed it. Reuben pulled Langston into a side office on the 6th floor and closed the door. He didn't sit. "When those logs go into the county record, everything attached to your appointment becomes discoverable," he said. "That means the sealed order comes out." Langston set his folder on the desk. "I know," he said. "You've known this was coming since the session opened," Reuben said. "Since last night," Langston said. "When I saw my badge was scanned and I hadn't been in the building." Reuben pulled a chair out and opened his notepad. "Then let's get ahead of it. When Maris's counsel finds out what your appointment actually means, the first thing they'll do is make you look like the one who set this up." 3 months earlier, Judge Evelyn Sutter had placed Langston inside the county's procurement division under a sealed order, not because he applied, but because an unrelated audit had surfaced a pattern of irregularities that the county couldn't investigate from the inside without alerting whoever was running it. She needed someone already in the building, someone with technical knowledge, clean access, and a profile that wouldn't trigger alarm. Langston had spent 2 years as a systems compliance analyst. His doctorate was in systems engineering. Nobody passing him in a corridor thought twice about it. The court hadn't chosen him despite how he looked. It had chosen him because of it. The humiliation that morning hadn't been random. Someone inside that building had known what Langston's appointment meant and spent the night before building a frame to discredit him before he could speak. Clone the badge. File a protest packet under his name. Embed Maris's certificate to muddy the water. If Gail had moved differently, if Reuben had accepted Maris's incident report at face value, Langston would have been walked out with his name attached to a forged filing, and the integrity review would have died before it started. Reuben looked up from his notepad. The 3 messages from the aid account this morning. Joyce traced the recipients. One went to an external address registered to a consulting firm. He paused. "That firm has a vendor relationship with Weatherby Capital Group." Langston didn't react. He had suspected the connection for 2 weeks. "Is the consultant named in the procurement record?" he asked. "As a subcontractor reference," Reuben said. "Not a direct party. They kept distance." He closed his notepad. "Until last night. Last night they moved fast and left a trail." He looked at Langston, which means something spooked them. Something made them decide they couldn't wait. Langston had submitted his preliminary findings to the court 3 days earlier. Sealed. Confidential. But court filings moved through a clerk's office before they reached a judge, and clerk's offices were not airtight. Someone had seen enough to know the window was closing. Reuben's phone buzzed. He read it and stood. The vendor lanyard on the camera footage traces back to a pass issued 48 hours ago. The name on the pass request is a shell, but the internal account that approved it isn't. He moved toward the door and looked back. When this gets proven, someone goes to jail, and the first name they'll try to drag down is yours. The person closest to the evidence always becomes the first target. Langston picked up his folder. "I've been the first target since this morning," he said. Reuben left. Langston stood alone in the office. His phone showed 2 notifications. His daughter's coordinator and the trust department message he'd been ignoring for weeks. Beneficiary action required. Voting rights notice. He put the phone in his pocket and walked back toward the stairwell. Upstairs, Maris was on her third attempt to reach someone on the county board. Still no answer. The compliance monitor she'd spent the morning trying to erase had been placed there by a judge who had already read enough to act. She hadn't walked into a procurement session. She had walked into a tripwire. Subscribe before the second layer comes out. What Langston doesn't know, yet is more dangerous to her than everything he does. Langston stepped into the stairwell and called his daughter's coordinator before she could message again. "I'm coming," he said. "Tell her I'm coming." The coordinator said she'd already told her. He asked if she was okay. The coordinator said she'd eaten her snack and was reading. He said he'd be there before 6:30. He hung up and stood still for 4 seconds in the stairwell, the first 4 seconds all day that nobody needed anything from him. Then he went back up the stairs. Gail was waiting in the corridor outside the 6th-floor conference room. She had sent her staff ahead and stood alone with a folder under her arm. When Langston reached the top step, she looked at him with the directness of someone who had decided to skip past courtesy. "You held the room today," she said. "I want you to know that wasn't lost on me." Langston nodded once. "Ruben is going to need your full findings file before end of day," she said. "Everything you submitted to the court, everything you didn't. We're moving to formal review and your documentation anchors it." She paused. "Can you do that?" "Yes," he said. Gail held his gaze a moment longer than necessary, then walked back toward the conference room. Ruben found him 2 minutes later. He didn't lead with encouragement. "They're going to come after your credibility next," he said. "It's the only move they have left. Expect someone to surface your employment history, your finances, anything that makes you look like you had a personal motive." He looked at Langston's jacket. "Dress differently tomorrow." Langston almost said something. Didn't. "I'm not saying it's right," Ruben said. "I'm saying it's coming." Maris found Langston near the elevator bank 20 minutes later. She had sent Asa back to the conference room. She approached without her usual forward energy, measured, recalibrated. "I want to talk," she said. "Not for the record." Langston waited. "I think we started badly," she said. "And I think there's a version of this where it doesn't have to go where it's going." She kept her voice level. "I have real positions. Funded positions. Systems compliance, infrastructure oversight. Work that actually matches what you know how to do." She let that sit. "You're clearly capable. You don't have to spend your career scanning badges at loading docks." Langston looked at her. "I don't scan badges," he said. "I track the people who misuse them." Maris shifted. "I'm trying to offer you something," she said. "I know," he said. She tried a different angle. "You've been carrying this alone," she said. "Single father, county salary, a sealed appointment that nobody can know about. That's a lot of pressure for one person." Her voice dropped slightly. "At some point, you have to ask yourself if the fight is worth what it costs you." Langston said nothing. "You don't own anything here," Maris said. "I want you to understand that. Whatever you think you're protecting, the county isn't going to protect you back." Langston looked at her steadily. "You sure about that?" he said. Maris's eyes held on him. Something in the line didn't land the way she expected. She started to respond, then stopped. Langston's phone screen lit up in his pocket. He didn't take it out, but he felt the vibration. 2 pulses, the pattern the trust department used for priority messages. The subject line he still hadn't opened. Beneficiary action required. Voting rights notice. It had been sitting there since morning, buried under everything that couldn't wait. He still didn't open it. Maris watched his expression and found nothing she could use. She nodded once, not agreement, not concession, and walked back toward the conference room. Langston looked down at his phone screen. The trust notification had moved to the top of his inbox. Tomorrow, a judge would say his name in a room Maris couldn't control, and everything she thought she understood about this fight would have to be rebuilt from the ground up. Judge Evelyn Sutter's courtroom on the 4th floor of the Fulton County Superior Court building on Pryor Street was a room where facts got weighed. Gail sat to the left, Ruben beside her, Langston at the end of the table with his folder. Maris came in with Asa and took the seat across from them without being invited to sit. Judge Sutter didn't open with pleasantries. She slid a file across the bench toward Asa. "Your client's company initiated a backdoor acquisition of Kestrel Gridworks 14 months ago," she said. "The acquisition failed. I want to know why that's relevant to this procurement." Asa looked at the file. His face tightened. Maris leaned forward. That acquisition attempt is a private corporate matter, she said. It has no bearing on a county infrastructure bid. Judge Sutter looked at her. It has direct bearing, she said. Your procurement team was working to ensure Kestrel couldn't compete for county contracts over the next 3 years. Undermining this county's compliance monitor was part of that strategy. Remove him, stall the integrity review, win the contract, then move on Kestrel again while they're locked out of public revenue. She set her pen down. That's not a private corporate matter. That's coordinated interference in a public process. Maris's jaw moved, but nothing came out. Judge Sutter turned to Langston. Dr. Pike, you received a priority notice from your trust department this morning. Did you open it? Langston's hand moved toward his phone. No, he said. I didn't have time. Then I'll say it plainly, Judge Sutter said. Your late wife's wrongful death settlement in Fulton County, the case that closed 4 years ago, established a family trust. The trust fiduciary took an equity position in Kestrel Gridworks during a secondary share sale 18 months ago. She paused. You are the primary beneficiary of that trust. The voting rights attached to that equity position belong to you. The room didn't move. Langston looked at the judge, then at the table. His wife had died in a hospital 2 miles from where he was sitting. The negligence case took 3 years to close. He'd handed the settlement to a trust manager because he was too deep in survival to manage money, and he had never tracked where the fiduciary put it. He had been keeping his daughter in school, his shifts covered, his findings documented, his name clean. He hadn't known. Maris turned toward him slowly. Her face had lost its composure for the first time all day, not in anger, not in fear, but in the blankness of someone whose map no longer matches the terrain. He didn't even know, she said. Not to the judge, not to Asa, to the room. Judge Sutter's voice cut through. But your company did, Ms. Weatherby. Asa put his hand on Maris's arm. She didn't move. Weatherby Capital's due diligence team ran a full shareholder registry on Kestrel 11 months ago, Judge Sutter said. Dr. Pike's trust appeared in that registry. Your team flagged it. 3 weeks later, your procurement consultant began communicating with a county aide about the compliance monitor assigned to this bid. She looked at Maris steadily. You didn't go after him because he was in your way. You went after him because his signature could block your acquisition, and you needed him discredited before anyone thought to ask him to use it. Maris's voice came back, quiet. He didn't even know he had it, she said. That's correct, Judge Sutter said. He didn't. You did, and you still moved against him. Langston looked at Maris. I didn't know I was an investor, he said. But you did. Maris said nothing. Judge Sutter moved. Ms. Weatherby, your company's conduct is under formal review. Your temporary access to Fulton County facilities is revoked effective now. Procurement proceedings remain paused pending independent audit. She looked at Asa. If your client or any representative contacts county staff about this procurement outside legal channels, I will treat it as interference and act accordingly. Asa nodded. Maris didn't. Outside the courtroom, in the corridor on Pryor Street, Maris stood beside Asa without speaking. Her usual moves, board calls, legal pressure, strategic offers, had no surface to land on. The compliance monitor she'd tried to walk out of a room that morning held a position she couldn't buy, threaten, or charm away. That mistake had cost her more than the contract. Subscribe before the audit results come back, because the chain they find doesn't stop at one name. The outside audit firm arrived at the Fulton County Procurement Annex the following morning. 3 people with access credentials issued by Judge Sutter's order, laptops, and a mandate that didn't require anyone's permission to execute. Joyce Kwan met them at the 7th floor and handed over the full system log before they asked for it. The chain moved fast once it had clean access. Terminal 7C's activity log showed 41 after-hours sessions over a 14-month period. Most were routine. 9 were not. The 9 sessions clustered around bid submission windows, each one occurring within 48 hours of a scoring deadline. Joyce had flagged 2 of them in her preliminary report. The audit team flagged all 9. The internal account that had approved the vendor lanyard pass traced back to a procurement aide named Delvon Actor. His county credentials showed standard activity during work hours. After hours, the pattern was different. Rubin had his full employment file pulled by noon. By 1 p.m., the audit team had matched 3 of Delvon's after-hours sessions to external messages sent from a consulting firm registered in Cobb County. a firm with a documented vendor relationship with Weatherby Capital Group. Rubin brought the finding to Gail. Gail called her legal team. The legal team called the DA's office. By 2 p.m., Delvon Actor had resigned. He submitted a one-line letter through his county email, cleared his desk, and left the building before anyone could schedule a formal interview. His county access was suspended within the hour. His personal phone, already flagged by the audit team, was added to a preservation order before he reached the parking garage. Rubin told Gail what he'd told Langston the day before. Resignation doesn't stop a subpoena. Gail already knew. Where's Weatherby's consultant in all this? She asked. Listed as a subcontractor reference in the bid documents, Rubin said. No direct contract with the county. Kept clean distance on paper. He set a printed page on the table. But the external messages from Delvon's account went to an address registered to that firm. And 3 of those messages referenced the compliance monitor by name. Gail looked at the page. They named him directly? By role and by name, Rubin said. 2 weeks before the session, Maris's company hadn't improvised. They had planned, documented, and left a trail because they had assumed the plan would work before anyone thought to look. Langston wasn't in the building when the audit chain surfaced Delvon's name. He was at his daughter's school in West End for a parent meeting that had been rescheduled twice in the last 3 weeks because he hadn't been able to make it. He sat in a small chair across from her teacher and listened to a progress report that had nothing to do with procurement fraud or digital certificates or voting rights. His daughter had improved her reading level. She was asking more questions in class. The teacher said she had a sharp mind. Langston drove back to the annex after the meeting and checked his messages in the parking garage before going in. Rubin had sent 3. The audit trail had reached Delvon. Delvon had resigned. The consultant firm was now under a document preservation order. He sat in the car for a moment. Not from exhaustion. He went inside. Maris was not in the building. Her facility access had been revoked the afternoon before. But her legal team had filed 2 motions that morning, one challenging the scope of the audit mandate, one requesting that Langston's sealed appointment be reviewed for procedural irregularity. Both motions landed on Judge Sutter's desk before 10. Both were denied before noon. Maris tried one more move before the day ended. She called Kestrel Gridworks directly and asked for a meeting with their board. Kestrel's legal team took the call, listened, and scheduled a preliminary conversation for the following week. It was the only door still open to her. What she didn't know was that Kestrel's board had already been briefed, not by Langston, not by the county, but by their own legal team after the court proceedings became part of the county record. They knew who held the voting rights. They knew how those rights had been acquired. And they knew that the woman now asking for a partnership meeting had spent the last 14 months trying to lock them out of every public contract in Fulton County. They took the meeting because boards take meetings. But they had already asked their legal team one question before they confirmed the date. Rubin found Langston on the 6th floor late that afternoon and told him about Delvon's resignation. He left fast, Rubin said. Someone warned him. Langston looked at the window. Same someone who warned the aide account before the session opened, he said. Rubin nodded. If Maris gets formally disqualified, he said, she will try to burn the process on the way out. Langston picked up his folder. Let her try, he said. The process is already on record. The final procurement hearing reopened 6 days after the audit team submitted their findings to Judge Sutter. Gail called the session to order at 9 in the morning. The room was fuller than it had been the first day. County legal staff, 2 representatives from the DA's office, and 3 vendors whose bids had been sitting in suspension while the process worked itself out. Maris came in with Asa and a second attorney Langston hadn't seen before. Langston came in alone, set his folder on the table, and sat. Gail opened the record. The independent audit has been completed and submitted, she said. Findings have been reviewed by this committee, county legal counsel, and the Superior Court. We will proceed to formal determination today. Maris's new attorney, a woman named Petra Solano, moved immediately. Madam Chair, before findings are entered into the record, we'd like to address the scope of the audit mandate, she said. The original sealed order was issued without adversarial process. Our client had no opportunity to respond to the evidence that triggered it. Gail looked at Rubin. Rubin pulled a page from his folder. The mandate was reviewed and upheld by Judge Sutter 4 days ago, he said. That review is already in the record. Petra set her pen down. Maris leaned toward her, and said something that didn't reach the microphones. Petra gave a short nod and sat back. Gail turned to Langston. "Dr. Pike, please present the audit summary for the record." Langston opened his folder. He didn't frame it. He didn't contextualize it. He read the timeline. 9 after-hours terminal sessions tied to bid submission windows. 3 sessions matched to external messages referencing the compliance monitor by name and role. 1 vendor lanyard pass approved through an internal account belonging to Delvon Actor. 1 protest packet uploaded under Langston's credentials carrying an embedded certificate belonging to Weatherby Capital Group. 1 consulting firm in Cobb County connected to both the AID account and Weatherby Capital's vendor registry. He read each item in sequence. When he finished, he closed the folder. The room was quiet for a moment. Maris didn't wait. "Everything he just read is circumstantial," she said. "An aide who resigned. Messages that reference a role, not a conspiracy. A certificate that my company cannot account for, but did not authorize." Her voice was controlled, built for rooms like this one. "You are about to disqualify a company from a $43 million public contract based on an audit that was designed by the same court that appointed the man running it. That is not process. That is a predetermined outcome." She looked at the room. "Public services depend on this contract. Real infrastructure. Real timelines. And you're going to hand it to a lesser vendor because 1 compliance monitor decided my company was worth targeting." Nobody in the room moved toward her. Gail looked at the audit summary in front of her. Then at Maris. "Ms. Weatherby," she said, "your company's bid documents contain a subcontractor reference tied to a consulting firm now under a document preservation order. Your company's digital certificate appeared inside a fraudulent filing. An internal account connected to your consultant approved an unauthorized access pass used to impersonate this county's compliance monitor." She set the page flat. "That is not circumstantial. That is a pattern with your company's name running through it." Petra started to speak. Gail held up one hand. "Weatherby Capital Group is formally disqualified from this procurement," Gail said. "The disqualification is entered into the county record effective today. The remaining qualified bids will be reviewed, and a determination will be made within 30 days. Maris's face didn't collapse. It went still, the way things go still when every exit has been closed. Asa put a hand on the table in front of her. She didn't look at him. Petra was already gathering her documents. She had taken the second chair because she knew what the first attorney knew, that the record was too clean to fight in this room. Whatever came next would have to be fought somewhere else. 2 days later, Maris went to the Kestrel board meeting. She brought a restructured partnership offer and a legal team that had spent 72 hours refining the language. The Kestrel board listened. When she finished, their lead counsel asked one question. "Has Dr. Pike been consulted on this proposal?" Maris looked across the table. "Not yet," she said. "Then we'd need his sign-off before we could move forward," the counsel said. Given his voting position, any structural agreement of this scale would require it. Maris looked at the table. She had walked into that room with leverage she'd spent 14 months building. It had taken one question to remove it. She couldn't force a signature. She couldn't buy one. And the man whose name was on the line had already told her exactly what he wanted. A clean process, accountability, and nothing from her. The room didn't ask her to leave. It just waited. And waiting, for the first time, was the only move she had. Fulton County awarded the infrastructure contract 31 days after Maris's disqualification. The vendor who received it had submitted a clean bid, met every compliance threshold, and had never needed to touch anyone else's credentials to stay in the running. The announcement was made in a standard county press release. No ceremony, no press conference. The process had been corrected, and the county moved forward the way corrected processes do, without applause. Delvon Actor was served with a subpoena 8 days after his resignation. His attorney entered a response 2 weeks later. The consulting firm in Cobb County received a second preservation order covering 18 months of communications. The DA's office had what it needed to build from. Langston met with the trust department on a Thursday afternoon in a conference room on Peachtree Street. The fiduciary walked him through the equity position in Kestrel Gridworks, the share volume, the voting weight, the decisions that had been made on his behalf while he was working shifts and raising his daughter and keeping his findings documented. He asked questions he should have asked years ago. The fiduciary answered all of them. By the end of the meeting, Langston understood what he held and what it meant. He left with a folder thicker than the one he'd carried into the procurement session and a list of decisions that were now his to make. He picked his daughter up from school that afternoon without checking his phone once. She climbed into the car, dropped her bag on the seat, and looked at him the way children look at a parent when they've been paying attention to something the parent didn't know they noticed. "Dad," she said, "that lady on the news. Was that the one from your job?" Langston looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Yeah," he said. She thought about it for a moment. "Did she say sorry?" Langston pulled out of the school lot and onto the street. "Not exactly," he said. His daughter looked out the window. "But you won, though," she said. "Not as a question." "The process won," he said. She accepted that the way children accept answers that are true even when they're not simple. They drove the rest of the way without talking about it. The overdue balance at the clinic was paid the following week. The school fees stopped carrying a warning notice. Langston kept his county position. His appointment had been extended by Judge Sutter pending the completion of the broader procurement review. He attended a Kestrel board briefing as a shareholder, asked 3 questions about safety compliance and subcontractor vetting, and left before the lunch they offered him because he had somewhere else to be. Maris Weatherby stepped down as CEO of Weatherby Capital Group 5 weeks after the disqualification. The board accepted her resignation with a statement that said nothing and meant everything. She didn't disappear. People with her resources and her history don't disappear. But the thing she had built her identity on, the ability to control outcomes, had taken a wound the next quarter's numbers couldn't close. The last time Langston saw her was outside the Fulton County procurement annex. She was alone. She looked at him and held the look long enough to say something real. "I underestimated you," she said. Langston didn't offer her absolution. He didn't offer her a lesson. "You underestimated what you couldn't see," he said. "That's the part that cost you." He walked inside. The building security guard nodded at him. He nodded back. His badge scanned clean on the first try, the way it always had.